We have joining us now Professor Shin Sang-hyup from Kyunghee University to break us the latest developments down for us. Thank you for coming back on the show today.
My pleasure.
Now, as we just heard in that report, it's been announced that the Trump administration will be lifting the quotas on steel and aluminium imports from South Korea. What does this mean, really, for South Korean steelmakers? Good news, I'm guessing?
Yes, certainly it is a good news for the Korean steelmakers. Of course, Korean steelmakers have really concern about the very protectionist trade policy of the United States government. And they have prepared to minimize the potential damages in their business with the United States. Well, in the middle of those kind of concerns, this must be a very good news. But one thing which I want to underline is that Korean steelmakers, after the report about the USA government new trade policy on steel, the industry and aluminium industry, the Korean steelmakers have very aggressively contacted with the American counterparts. They try to persuade the USA government through the American business partners. And certainly the American business partners, they also recognize some potential difficulties caused by the protectionist USA government policy toward the Korean steel products and aluminum products. And then certainly there will be the midterm election in November. On the part of the Mr. Trump administration, they should listen to the voices from the industries. Steel industry is one of the key industries in the USA. And then the USA industry, according to the report, they have asked the USA government to change their protectionist trade policy toward the steel and aluminum products. I think we can understand the change of USA policy toward steel and aluminum products this time in this context.
You've mentioned there the actions that South Korean steelmakers made. So is that why South Korea is one of these countries that has been given exemption? Or is there some other kind of political play here as well?
I think so. Along with the Korean and Brazilian, the steelmakers also get the benefits from this decision. And then the Argentine, the aluminum producers will be on the list of the benefits from this decision made by the USA government. If I added up some analysis, including the political consideration, as you very well, right now the USA has the trade war with China. And certainly China seems to be the main target of the new very protectionist USA trade policy. And when the USA government started the trade war with China, to avoid the criticism, they are focusing on targeted only to China, they also started to trade war with the European Union and even the third world countries such as Korea and Brazil and Argentina. But I think the USA government made it clear what kind of the goal they have in implementing such a very protectionist trade policy. So by having a negotiation with the European countries, Korea and Brazil and Argentina, they can reduce some kind of burden in implementing such a kind of very protectionist trade policy. That means that it can be understood as more burden on the Chinese government.
By having these kind of tariffs and these quotas before, but then suddenly taking them away and having negotiations take them away, doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose of having these tariffs in the first place? The US, they said, and the Trump administration was very much America first, we're going to be protectionist, but then they're going back, it seems that they're going back on some of their promises.
Well, certainly this is a very important point. Lack of consistency, USA government, for example, started the trade war with China early this year. And in the trade relationship with China, they kept on some consistency. For example, they imposed the $34 billion of Chinese goods, imposed the 25% tariffs. And additionally, they also decided to impose the 25% tariffs on $16 billion of Chinese goods. And they even hold the unprecedented 6-day the public hearings on the plans to impose the $200 billion of Chinese products, which will go into effect in September. So they kept on. USA government kept stepping up the pressure on the Chinese government. But in the relationship with other countries, right? As I already explained, in the trade relationship with the European Union, certainly they started negotiation. To discuss about the trade issues. Certainly, I think that the USA government, there's a high possibility that USA government will change their stance toward the European industries. In the same context, as we discussed before, USA government seems to change their very protectionist trade policy toward Korea and Brazil and then Argentina. So certainly we can classify the USA stance into two categories. One is toward China, they kept on consistency, but to other countries, they have shown some big changes on their stance toward those countries.
I guess we see that in the latest negotiations with Mexico as well. They say they're going to scrap NAFTA, but it's pretty much the same deal that they're having, but with Mexico. And now they're going to try to get Canada involved as well. They're in negotiations as well.
Well, as you know very well, the USA, Mexico, and Canada are member countries of NAFTA. Well, according to the report, USA government finalized the trade deal with Mexico. That means they should start the trade negotiation with Canada. So it means that politically they got score. For the November election, it can be very, very favorable. Good news for the Trump administration. But I think about the report that this can be leeway for, to step up the pressure on the Chinese government in the trade war. USA government, yes, I think so. USA government will take advantage of this, the deal with Mexico to twist the arms of the Chinese government with a strong strength. So I think it's a very complicated one, but certainly this is not the only trade issues. USA is competing with China to get the hegemony power in the region. So definitely USA will keep on stepping up their pressure on Chinese government until China will accept the demands from the USA. Of course, the Chinese government has officially said that they will not accept the demands from USA without enough talks about the trade issues with the USA. But I think practically speaking, considering the economic foundations, USA has stronger foundations than Chinese economy. And then if I give you a figure, out of total US exports, the American government, the imports from China, USA government can impose up to $500 billion Chinese products. How about China? Out of the total China, they can impose the tariffs up to $150 billion. That means that in terms of the total imports volume, there are big differences, So if the situation goes on for a while, definitely the economic damages, burden, which the USA government will bear and then Chinese does, definitely Chinese government seems to take the heavier burden on the economy. So if time goes on, China will seek for the solutions more faster than the American government.
I'm guessing that's why the Trump administration right now don't have really intentions to really try to negotiate with China. Even Trump himself has said that it's not the right time to talk with China right now.
Right time means for the Americans' perspectives, you have to accept our demands first. And then with the those kind of new stance, return to the table, negotiation table. Then we will be able to talk. That's the American stance. But how about the Chinese government stance? Chinese government stance, no, we will not accept the demands from USA without full considerations. We have our thought and we have our situations. So we have to start talk and negotiation about this one with the American government without any, any preset conditions. Set by the USA government. We will not have a talks. That's the reason why the officials of the two governments have the talks to solve the trade war between two countries, but they have failed to produce the very fruitful, the concrete outcomes. That's the reason, because that two governments has two different stance about this issue. So without compromising these differences about this issue, practically speaking, I think it will be very difficult to find a solution between two countries.
One more topic before we go as well. Trump in the last few days has mentioned a few times that negotiations with North Korea are not going well because of China and because of the trade dispute with China. Do you think China is really interfering with North Korea because of the trade dispute? Or put it a different way, if the US and China weren't having a trade dispute, would China not be interfering with North Korea?
I think it's like a coin which has two sides. On the part of China, definitely they want to strengthen the relations with North Korea, and they must consider, strengthen the relationship with North Korea as a way to to change the American stance toward trade war. But Mr. Trump has emphasized that because of China, particularly after the second meeting between the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and then Chinese President Xi Jinping, Mr. Trump said that North Korea was changed. So that's the reason. The whole responsibility for the current situation is lying on the Chinese government. But Chinese government officials said, no, we never. They did not accept it. So what I'm talking about is that according to the report in the September 9th, there was a report that President Xi Jinping was scheduled to visit to North Korea to celebrate the event in North Korea. But I doubt whether he will go there right now, because if he visit to North Korea, then USA president and USA government will step up their criticism against the Chinese government. So Chinese government should have to consider the gains and losses which they will have from the President Xi's visit to North Korea. Why I'm explaining this one? This is the one aspect showing the relations between USA and China and North Korea. The USA use the North Korean nuclear issues to step up their pressure on the Chinese side. Chinese government also try to use the North Korean nuclear issues to reduce the pressure imposed by the USA government on their government. So we have to wait and see, but it's not very simple. It must be very complicated. And we have to think about gains and losses which South Korean government will get from those kind of situations. Because, we have to discuss about the current issues and then potential issues with the USA government and North Korea. And then, possibly maybe we have to talk about these kind of situations with China. But all situations are intertwined, so it's not very simple. So, anyway, we have to, be very careful, and we have to prepare which one is which can be the best solution to overcome the current situation.
Yes, everything is very much tied up between those 3-4 countries there. Thank you for your insights today, as usual, and we hope to have you back next time as well.
My pleasure.